Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, The Intimacy Lab. You know, there's a particular kind of moment I want to invite you to reflect on today. Imagine sitting across from the woman you love and she's angry. Her words are sharp, her body tense, her eyes seem distant yet burning. You might think, she must hate me, she must be done with me, but what if I told you that her anger isn't hatred at all? What if her anger is actually a form of attachment, hidden, tangled, desperate to be seen but afraid of the vulnerability that would require? You see, we often misunderstand the emotional language of women, especially when it comes clothed in anger. For many men, anger feels like rejection, like the closing of a door. But for some women, anger is the last language left when attachment has become too painful to express gently. It's not that she doesn't care, it's that she cares so deeply that she no longer knows how to tell you without hurting herself. So today, we're going to walk into this hidden emotional landscape together. We'll unravel what's really behind her anger, not as a symptom of hate, but as a clue to her secret attachment. And along the way, you may discover not only how to hear her more clearly, but how to hold her more wisely. So let's stay in that moment we spoke of earlier. You're sitting across from her, and her anger feels like a storm. You're watching her movements, maybe even trying to track the shift in her tone, wondering if you've lost her completely. And I want to invite you to ask a different question in that moment, not why is she angry at me? But what is her anger protecting right now? Because, my friend, anger is often a mask. And sometimes it's a shield women pick up when they no longer feel safe enough to show you their true vulnerability. Her anger can feel loud and frightening, but underneath it is often sadness, longing, fear of abandonment, even grief over disconnection. Have you noticed how easy it is to take her anger at face value? You tell yourself, she's impossible, she doesn't respect me, she must be done with me. And so you begin to withdraw. You retreat, give her space, or worse, you fight back, and suddenly, two people who once knew how to be close are sitting across from each other like strangers at war. But what if you could learn to listen differently? What if you understood that, for many women, anger is their clumsy way of staying in contact when they feel unseen? When women get angry, especially in intimate relationships, it often signals that they are still deeply invested. The opposite of love, as we know, is not hate, it's indifference. When a woman has truly detached, she's no longer angry, she's quiet, withdrawn, unavailable, numb. Her anger is a paradox. It's the noise she makes when she's still hoping you'll hear her, and this is where men often misinterpret the landscape. You think she's angry, so I must give her space, when what she might actually be crying out for is for you to stay, to listen, to understand her frustration not as an attack, but as a sign that she's still attached. Let's imagine an example. You come home late again. She snaps at you, her words cutting. You don't care about this family, you don't care about me. Your instinct is to defend yourself, maybe to explain or even to argue back. I work hard, I do care, why can't you see that? But beneath her accusation is a deeper feeling. I missed you, I needed you, I feel alone. Her anger is her way of telling you that your presence matters, even if she doesn't know how to ask for it gently anymore. This is important to understand because attachment is rarely expressed in perfect, polished language. When we feel hurt or insecure in love, we often regress. We lash out, we test, we provoke. And what's fascinating is that for many women, anger feels safer than sadness. When she's angry, she feels powerful, at least for a moment. But if she allowed herself to fully feel her sadness, she'd feel exposed, vulnerable, and dependent on your response. So she chooses anger not because she hates you, but because her attachment to you still matters more than she's willing to admit in that moment. There's another layer here too. Anger can be generationally inherited. Many women have been raised to be good, to be polite, to please others, but also to suppress their own needs. For some women, anger only emerges after years of holding in disappointments, small betrayals, overlooked feelings. By the time it surfaces, it's volcanic. You might feel blindsided, confused by the intensity, but in truth, you are seeing the accumulation of unspoken moments. This is why listening, really listening, matters. When she's angry, what's beneath her words? What is she not saying? Can you stay curious enough to look past the surface and ask yourself, what's the deeper attachment need here? And maybe you're thinking, but isn't that exhausting? Why should I decode her anger? Why can't she just say what she means, and I understand? It can feel unfair at times to have to read between the lines. But relationships are not about fairness in that rigid way. They are about understanding the complexity of human emotions, especially when those emotions come from someone you love. Let me tell you a little secret about human nature. We don't always know what we feel, and even when we do, we rarely communicate it clearly, especially in the heat of emotion. So part of being an emotionally intelligent man, part of being the kind of partner who can hold space for real intimacy, is developing your capacity to hear what is unsaid. This doesn't mean tolerating disrespect or accepting aggression. No, it means understanding that her anger is a signal, not a conclusion. It's a moment to pause and say, I see you're upset. Help me understand what you're feeling underneath all this. And even more powerfully, you can reflect back what you suspect she might be feeling. It sounds like you're hurt that I didn't come home earlier tonight. It sounds like you missed me and you don't know how to tell me without feeling weak. In that moment, you invite her to soften. You show her that you're not afraid of her anger, that you're strong enough to hear her, to stay present, and to care about the feelings hidden underneath her sharp words. And this is the point where your relationship begins to change. Because when a woman feels that her anger is finally being understood as a plea for connection, she no longer needs to stay trapped in that mode. She begins to trust that you can handle her complexity, and this trust is the very foundation of deeper intimacy. But this isn't always easy. Sometimes your own emotions will get triggered. Her anger might provoke your defensiveness, your pride, your need to protect yourself. And this is where your work begins too, because love, mature love, isn't about who wins the argument or who makes the most convincing point. It's about who can stay open even when it would be easier to shut down. So next time she's angry, ask yourself, can I stay curious here? Can I look beyond the words and see what's driving this anger? Because anger, when you listen closely, isn't the enemy of love. It's often its imperfect messenger. Let's stay right here in this reflection, because as we keep going, there's something even deeper to unpack about the ways women express attachment through anger. And so, as you sit with this understanding, something begins to shift inside you. You're no longer reacting to her anger as a personal attack, but beginning to recognize it as a form of communication, an invitation, even if clumsy, even if loud. It's as if her anger is her last-ditch effort to keep the connection alive, to reach you when her gentler invitations have failed or gone unnoticed. And that's what attachment does. It doesn't disappear quietly. It flares, it clings, it protests. You might have noticed that when she's at her angriest, she's also paying the most attention to you. There's an intensity in her gaze, in her questions, in her criticisms. That intensity itself is attachment. Indifference looks very different. It looks like disengagement, disinterest, polite but distant conversation. When she truly no longer cares, she won't even bother to argue. This is where men often misjudge the moment. You see her fury and assume you've lost her, when in fact, she may be fighting harder than ever to stay connected. Fighting, yes, but fighting to preserve something. So what do you do when you're caught in this storm? It begins with understanding your own reflexes. Many men feel an immediate need to defend themselves, to explain, to correct her narrative. It's natural. You want her to see that your intentions were good, that you meant no harm. But when someone is angry, explanations often feel hollow or even invalidating. What they want is not explanation, but acknowledgment. Acknowledgment sounds like this. I can hear that you're really upset. I can feel how much this matters to you. I can see that something here is painful for you. Notice that none of these statements are admissions of guilt. They're not about surrendering or accepting blame blindly. They're about meeting her where she is emotionally, showing her that you're willing to be present with her feelings even when they're uncomfortable. And this presence is rare. So many people grow up in families where anger was either punished or ignored. Maybe in your own life, anger was something dangerous, something to get away from quickly. Or maybe it was something you learned to match with your own anger, escalating, trading barbs, raising voices. But you're no longer that boy who had to defend himself or hide. You're a man now, capable of holding space for your partner's full range of emotions. And sometimes this means listening for what's beneath the surface of her words. When she says, "You never make time for me," the easy reaction is to argue, "That's not true, we just went out last week." But if you listen with your heart, you might hear what she's really saying. "I feel lonely. I miss the way we used to be. I need to feel close to you again." Her anger is not random, it's relational. It's tied to the places where she feels vulnerable with you, where she has opened herself and now feels exposed, uncertain, hurt. And here's the paradox. When you can see her anger as attachment, you stop feeling threatened by it. You begin to realize that her intensity comes from how much she still wants to matter to you, to matter deeply. But this also means looking at yourself. Are there ways in which you've become emotionally unavailable? Have you withdrawn subtly, maybe without even realizing it? Have you allowed routine, work, or distraction to replace curiosity, affection, and presence? Women often sense emotional distance before it's spoken, and they react not because they don't care, but precisely because they do. Anger becomes their alarm system, alerting them to the fact that intimacy feels threatened, or that they are becoming invisible in the relationship. So your opportunity as a man who wants to understand is to ask, how have I contributed to this dynamic? What has she been trying to tell me long before the anger appeared? Because anger rarely shows up unannounced. It's the culmination of small miscues, unspoken disappointments, gestures of connection that were overlooked or taken for granted. And what she may long for most is not perfection from you, but presence. The kind of presence that says, "I'm here, I'm listening, even when this is hard, even when I don't fully understand, I'm not going anywhere." There's something powerful that happens when a man can hold this steady ground, when he doesn't collapse into defensiveness or flee in the face of her anger, but remains calm, compassionate, curious. This steadiness is what allows her to relax her guard. It gives her permission to move from anger back into vulnerability, from confrontation back into connection. And yet, I want to be clear, this isn't about tolerating toxic behavior or accepting disrespect. There's a difference between anger as a sign of attachment and anger that becomes abusive, controlling, or harmful. Your role is to listen for the distinction. Is this anger coming from a place of pain, longing, and attachment? Or is it masking deeper patterns of control, resentment, and unresolved wounds? If it's the former, if her anger is a clumsy cry for closeness, then there's an incredible opportunity here for growth, for both of you. You might say to her gently, "I see that you're upset, and I want to understand what's underneath this. Can we slow down? I care about you, and I care about what's happening between us. Even in moments of anger, this kind of communication opens doors that might otherwise stay shut, and you might find that as soon as she feels heard, the anger softens. Her tone shifts, the sharpness recedes, because so much of her fury is not about wanting to fight. It's about wanting to feel safe enough to lay down her weapons. Her anger isn't hate, it's a signal, imperfect, messy, sometimes hard to bear, but a signal nonetheless that she still wants to be connected to you. And this is where your strength matters most, not in overpowering her or proving your point, but in staying steady, curious, kind, and willing to see her not just as angry, but as attached. So as we sit in this space together, as you reflect on your own relationships and the women who may have expressed themselves through anger, I invite you to ask, can I become a man who listens not just to the words, but to the emotions behind them? Can I learn to welcome her complexity rather than fear it? Because that is where true intimacy lies, in the space between her anger and your understanding, between her clumsy cry for connection and your willingness to respond not with defense, but with compassion. Let's stay here, because there's still so much more to explore about the ways we misunderstand anger, attachment, and what women are really asking for when they seem the most impossible to reach. And as you allow yourself to sit with this deeper understanding that her anger is not the enemy, but a complicated signal of attachment, you begin to notice something else. Her anger doesn't exist in isolation. It's part of a dynamic and emotional dance that involves you as much as it involves her. What makes this so challenging is that when someone you care about becomes angry, it awakens something in you too. You might feel judged, blamed, trapped. You might feel the impulse to justify, to retreat into your own silence, or perhaps lash out in return. But if we pause here, if we step back just enough to see the whole picture, we realize that this isn't just about her anger. It's about the space between you, about how both of you have been negotiating closeness, distance, safety, and vulnerability. So I want you to ask yourself honestly, how do you typically respond when she becomes angry? Do you shut down? Do you try to fix it quickly so that the tension will go away? Do you avoid her altogether, hoping she'll cool off on her own? Or do you rise to meet her intensity with your own frustration, escalating, mirroring her mood until what began as an argument about something small becomes a battlefield littered with old resentments and fresh wounds? Because what often happens in these moments is that we stop seeing the person we love, and we start seeing a threat. And this shift from seeing your partner as your beloved to seeing them as your adversary is the precise moment when relationships begin to fracture. But if you can catch yourself in that moment, if you can recognize that her anger is often just a clumsy expression of her longing to be close to you, then you unlock something incredibly powerful. The ability to stay connected even in conflict. Think about that for a moment. What would it feel like to stay connected, to stay present, calm, curious, even when her words feel sharp, when her tone stings, when her anger feels overwhelming? This is what we mean when we talk about emotional maturity. It's not about avoiding conflict or pretending everything is fine or silencing your own emotions to keep the peace. It's about being able to stand steady in the storm, to recognize that her anger isn't hate, that it isn't the end of love, but often, paradoxically, a messy cry to restore love. And when you can hold that understanding, you create a kind of emotional safety that allows her to soften. Because here's the truth that is so often overlooked. Women don't want to stay angry. Anger is exhausting. Anger burns through energy, patience, even hope. No woman longs to spend her days in a state of fury. What she truly wants is connection, closeness, tenderness, even when it feels impossible to ask for in the moment. But anger emerges because she no longer knows how to ask gently. Maybe past wounds have made it hard for her to stay soft when she feels disappointed. Maybe old patterns from childhood, from past relationships, have taught her that anger is the only way she can be heard. And so she raises her voice not because she's against you, but because she feels unheard. In this moment, your task isn't to become perfect. It isn't to agree with every criticism or to surrender your perspective entirely. It's simply to stay present, to hold steady, to listen beneath the surface of her words for what she's really asking you to hear. That might sound like, when you came home late without calling, I felt invisible, I felt like I didn't matter to you, I felt lonely. She might not say it that way. She might never say it that way. Instead, she might accuse, criticize, or provoke, but underneath, her deeper truth is often tender and full of longing. And when you respond not just to her words, but to that deeper truth, you change everything. You transform the argument from a fight about punctuality or forgotten plans into a conversation about belonging, about mattering, about connection. Imagine the power of that moment when instead of defending yourself you say, I see that you're hurt, and that hurts me too because I care about us. I care about how you feel, even if I didn't mean to let you down. This isn't weakness, it's strength, the kind of strength that can hold complexity, that can stay grounded even when emotions run high. And the beautiful thing is that this doesn't just heal her, it heals you too. Because when you stop seeing her anger as something to fear, you also stop fearing your own emotional responses. You become more available, more present, more attuned. You begin to realize that conflict, when handled with curiosity and compassion, can actually deepen intimacy rather than destroy it. And maybe, just maybe, this whole dynamic begins to change. She begins to trust you more because she senses that you can hold space for her whole self, not just the parts of her that are pleasant and easy to love. She begins to relax because she no longer has to scream to be heard. Her anger softens into sadness, her sadness softens into openness, her openness becomes an invitation back into closeness. This is the path that few take, but it is the path of emotional mastery and love. It's not easy, it takes practice. It takes patience, but it's worth it because on the other side of this journey is a relationship that can weather storms without breaking, a connection that feels safe, deep, and alive. So next time you find yourself sitting across from her while she's angry, breathe, pause. Look beyond her words and ask yourself, where is her attachment showing up in this moment? What is her anger protecting? What longing is she struggling to express? And then meet her there, not as her opponent, but as her partner, her witness, her companion through the complexity of love. This is the work that changes not only your relationship, but who you are as a man. And as you sit with this new lens, seeing her anger not as the end but as a doorway, not as rejection but as evidence of her still caring, you might realize something profound. The way you respond to her anger could very well determine the depth of trust, connection, and closeness you're able to create with her going forward. Because you see, underneath every angry outburst lies a simple human need, to feel seen, heard, and valued. And that need doesn't disappear with time. In fact, for many women, the longer it goes unacknowledged, the more their frustration intensifies. This is why her anger seems disproportionate at times, why what looks like a small comment or oversight explodes into a larger argument. It's because her anger isn't just about this moment, it's about all the moments that came before it. The unmet needs, the silent disappointments, the invisible ways in which her attachment has felt at risk. But this isn't something to fear, this is an opportunity, an invitation to repair, to understand, to reconnect. Imagine what would happen if, instead of defending or shutting down, you leaned in, if you stayed close emotionally, mentally, physically, if you allowed her anger to be a signal that you are needed, that your presence matters, that your ability to understand matters. Because here's a truth many men don't realize: a woman's anger is often strongest where her attachment is deepest. She's angry because she cares, she's frustrated because she's invested, she's raising her voice because she's terrified you're not listening. So when you meet her anger with curiosity rather than combat, with patience rather than retreat, you shift the entire emotional equation. You invite her out of her fight or flight mode and back into her softer self, the self that is longing for closeness, tenderness, and shared understanding. This is where relationships deepen. This is where emotional intimacy is born, not in the easy moments, but in the hard ones, when both people remain present despite their discomfort. And there's something even more beautiful that happens in this space. When you show her that you can handle her anger, that you don't collapse under it, that you don't punish her for it, that you don't abandon her because of it, she begins to trust you in ways she never could before, because she's learning that you are a safe place, a place where she doesn't have to edit herself so carefully, a place where her complexity is allowed to exist. This is the beginning of true emotional safety, and emotional safety is what allows women to soften, to put down their defenses, to stop using anger as the primary language of attachment. Over time, her anger will evolve into clearer communication. She'll begin to express her needs before they become resentments. She'll feel safer asking for what she wants directly, because she knows you're listening, deeply listening, even when her emotions feel raw. And what about you? What happens to you when you adopt this new posture? You become more grounded, you become more secure in yourself. You stop reacting from a place of fear or pride, and instead you start responding from a place of wisdom. You realize that your strength isn't diminished by staying calm, it's proven by it. You realize that holding steady in the face of someone else's emotions doesn't mean you're weak or passive. It means you are resilient, emotionally mature, and capable of navigating intimacy at its most challenging points. This changes you as a partner, yes, but it also changes you as a man. You develop emotional dexterity, the ability to feel your own feelings without becoming enslaved by them, the ability to witness another's emotions without needing to control or fix them immediately. You develop the capacity to remain present in love's most difficult moments, and that capacity is what creates lasting, meaningful connection. So I want you to remember this. When she is angry, she is still reaching for you. When she is angry, she still wants you to matter. When she is angry, she's saying in her own imperfect way, I care enough about this relationship to fight for it, even if I don't yet know how to do that skillfully. And your gift, your power, is to listen beyond her words, to meet her anger not as an adversary, but as a companion willing to walk through the fire with her, until both of you can emerge stronger, wiser, and closer than before. You might even find that once you stop fearing her anger, you stop fearing conflict itself. You start to trust that love is not defined by the absence of conflict, but by the presence of understanding, even in conflict. Love that can weather anger is love that can weather life. So next time you sit across from her and see that fire in her eyes, breathe. Listen, respond not to her sharp words, but to the deeper emotions underneath, and know that in doing so, you are building something rare, something beautiful, something lasting, because her anger isn't hate, it's attachment. And when you can recognize that, when you can honor the vulnerability hidden inside that anger, you unlock a deeper level of connection than most couples ever reach. This is your opportunity not to fix her, not to avoid her, but to see her, truly see her, and by doing so, allow yourself to be seen too. And isn't that what we all long for at the end of the day? To feel seen, understood, and loved even when we're at our most difficult. Especially then. So thank you for sitting with me today, for reflecting, for being willing to look at yourself and your relationships with fresh eyes. If this resonates with you, take a moment to reflect on where in your life you might practice this kind of listening. Where might you stay present where you used to retreat? Where might you offer curiosity where you used to offer judgment? This is the work, and it's beautiful, hard, transformative work. And I promise if you show up for it, your relationships will change in ways you can't yet imagine. Thank you for being here with me at the Intimacy Lab today. If this conversation touched something inside you, I invite you to share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to know what resonates most. And if you haven't already, be sure to like this video and subscribe, so we can keep having these beautiful, difficult, important conversations together. Until next time, stay curious, stay kind, and remember, love grows where understanding lives.